Welcome, everybody. And in this session today, I'll be talking about Zilliz Cloud, vector search in general, and really how you can get started with Zilliz Cloud, what some of the features are, and what some of the use cases are as well, right? So let's dive right into it. Quick introduction. My name is Frank, Director of Operations, ML Architect here at Zilliz. There's my socials down there if you want to get in touch with me. And first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about Zilliz, who we are, and where we come from, right? So Zilliz Cloud itself, it is a vector database, but it's more the fully managed version of Milvus. Milvus is really the world's most popular open source vector database. You might have heard it. And what it really does is it gives you a very powerful and flexible way of storing, searching, and indexing a variety of embeddings and metadata from these machine learning models and whatever other unstructured data that you have. We have really lightning fast queries on any data set size, cost-effective storage of vectors. We'll get to that a little bit more in a later session, and absolutely zero ops overhead. So it is a fully managed service. Go online, click a couple of buttons, and you'll be able to spin up a production-ready vector database in just a matter of seconds, right? So it's really something that is meant to be full service from A to Z, no hassle required. So yeah, quick sort of preview of what's coming up in this session. First is I'll give an introduction to Zilliz Cloud. I'll talk about some of the features and functionality of Zilliz Cloud as follow on onto that. And I know a lot of folks who are watching this session are probably using Milvus already, the community edition of Zilliz Cloud. I'll talk a bit about migrating from Milvus as well. I'll follow up there with just a couple of use cases, and mind you, those will be some use cases, some popular ones that we've seen recently and throughout the course of Milvus and Zilliz Cloud development. And then I'll go through a quick demo, more so a quick tour, I suppose, rather than a quick demo. So without further ado, let's get into it, right? So a quick introduction to Zilliz Cloud. What is Zilliz Cloud? Now, I touched upon this a little bit already, but it is a platform. It is a production-ready vector database that is built on top of Milvus and optimized for whatever your application needs. If your application requires it's a very large application, you require lots of storage, we have a way to do that. If you need very, very high performance, high QPS, high throughput, we have ways of doing that as well. Highly elastic and scalable. So you can always scale up, scale down your cluster, your instance as you see fit, pay as you go, right? So there's no sort of, as you use the vector database, as you decide to stop it, depending on how much storage you're using, depending on how many vectors you're storing inside of it, your usage in terms of the compute, that is something we won't, I guess what's the right way to put it, we won't extend that, we won't enforce any strict, let's say 1 month, 6 month, 1 year timelines. And we're multi-cloud as well, right? So right now we're on AWS and GCP, definitely with more coming on the way. And we have 99.99% uptime SLA with absolutely zero data corruption. So if you do store your vectors in Zilliz Cloud, you can be absolutely sure that they will be there when you need it. You're never going to have lost data. We have a lot of safeguards built into place to prevent a lot of that from happening. Enterprise security and governance, right? So there's, I think, a lot to be said for creating these vector databases, these vector search engines, but without having a lot of those enterprise features that you need in them. And Zilliz Cloud absolutely is grade A in terms of, in this sense right here. And we're also integrated with a lot of key embedding models. So if you want to use large language models from LangChain, if you want to use open source models from Hugging Face, if you want to use the OpenAI embedding API or the Cohere embedding API or Torch vision models, Torch audio models, we have ways of doing that. Zilliz Cloud provides very, very easy integration with a lot of those models. We have great examples on the website as well. And we have support SDKs, Python and Java. So depending on your use case, depending on your needs, you're able to use that as you see fit. Okay, so now that we've gotten that out of the way, I do want to give folks a bit of a refresher on Milvus and what it's used for, how it's typically used in a production environment. And that will give us a very, I suppose, smooth transition into talking more about Zilliz Cloud as well. So Milvus is, as I mentioned earlier, it's the world's most popular open source vector database. And as a vector database, it's really meant to store a variety of different types of unstructured data, like as we like to call it. So you have a variety of, let's say, documents, you have a variety of text, and using embedding models or using neural network models, you will actually turn these into what are called these embedding vectors. And these vectors are a really good and a really powerful representation of your input data. So if I have, let's say, documents that are, let's say, a page long, or if I have some paragraphs, I have things that I want to index, I can turn those into vectors that represent semantically that input data very, very well, right? And then we store those vectors inside of Milvus. Milvus provides the storage, indexing, and search capabilities that you want. It does it a very, very scalable in a billion scale way, billion scale vectors, excuse me. So that's a bit about Milvus, right? And this is sort of lead into some of the things that we'll go over a little bit later in Zilliz Cloud. Now, these are some of the applications, absolutely not a complete list. Semantic text search, there's a lot of work that's being done recently when it comes to integrating vector databases with large language models. Molecular similarity search, another one of my favorite ones, the ability to turn these very, very complex molecular structures into fixed length vectors. We have the search, really do AI drug discovery, applications such as that using a vector database, and also some reverse image search as well. So if I want to be able to search for an image using other images, that's one of the ways to do it. And again, this is just a sample of the variety of different applications that you can build with Zilliz Cloud with a vector database, right? Cool. I do want to spend a bit of extra time talking about vector databases with LLMs. And a key way that we see a lot of builders, a lot of engineers, a lot of developers using Zilliz Cloud with LLMs is if you have a corpus of documents, or if you have, let's say you're in your company, you're in the finance industry, you have internal financial documents, and you want to be able to get your autoregressive language models to answer questions or to be able to summarize those documents. A very common way that we see that being done is using the vector database to store all of your documents and to query it. If you, let's say, give your language model a prompt, use that prompt as query in the vector database, and you'll be able to retrieve all the relevant documents related to that query, related to that prompt, inject that as extra prompt into your large language model, and you can get it to answer questions about that, about your query. You can really inject more domain knowledge into your application, right? And that's one of the very, very powerful ways that we've seen vector databases such as Zilliz Cloud being used in production today. I figured I wanted to take an extra minute or two to really highlight that, right? So why choose Zilliz over Milvus? And this is more, this is more a comparison of what Zilliz provides versus what Milvus provides. And again, both are fantastic vector databases. Zilliz Cloud is built on top of Milvus. And as you can see here, they both provide really all the functionality that you would want in terms of being able to, in terms of the underlying vector search capability. They both provide very scalable, efficient, easy to use vector similarity search. You can fine-tune a lot of your different parameters to be able to get exactly the type of performance that you need for your application. They also both provide hybrid search as well. So you can basically the ability to do both vector as well as metadata search, as well as scalar filtering. If I have vectors and I have these scalar fields associated with them, I can create indexes over all those fields and be able to do all of that. Support for a variety of different types of schemas. As we mentioned here, float and binary vectors, but at the same time, we also have support for strings as well, Boolean values, integers, so on and so forth. So you can really define the schema to be exactly what you need. And we also have the capability to do automatic indexing. You have, Zilliz Cloud has the capability to do automatic indexing. Milvus, you can, in a way, you can also do automatic indexing as well, but it does require a bit of extra code, a bit of extra logic to do so. On Zilliz Cloud, you simply specify auto index. Get into that a little bit more later. and you'll be able to really, Zilliz Cloud will be able to do the exact type of next step that you want. And we also have a variety of compatible SDKs for most community edition as well. For Zilliz, we have Python and Java. These are really fully supported, 100% tested to make sure that they really work with Zilliz Cloud, right? And I also want to get into some of the features that Zilliz Cloud provides that Milvus doesn't. The first is, I think obviously Zilliz Cloud is fully managed. So you have zero ops overhead, entirely automated. A lot of the features that you want, automatic upgrades, backup and restore, these are implemented in Zilliz Cloud. You don't have to worry about that. And we have very high availability as well, 99.49 uptime SLA with failover, so that if anything ever happens to your vector database, we can always recover that data. Elastic scaling, I alluded to this a little bit earlier. If you want to be able to do billion scale vector search, if you want to be able to do queries that are very rapid, 1,000, 10,000 queries per second, you want to be able to scale up your cluster as you really see fit. We have also a variety of machine types that are optimized to perform the best for your application. And again, we can do this a little bit later as well. We have as much storage as you want. So if you store, let's say, 100 million vectors, if you store a billion vectors, if you store a variety of metadata along with those, there's great ways, Zilliz Cloud can support that up to however much you need. And one of my favorite features as well is the amazing user-friendly UI that you can use to manage, to view, to monitor, to look at your Milvus instance really at any time, to manage a lot of metrics there. And we also have resource monitors as well, right? So if you want to be able to set any limits, you can be able to set any thresholds. If your database is being a little bit overused and you want to automatically be able to upgrade to a larger instance, that is one of the ways that you can do that as well. All right. So we also have, in terms of support, in terms of service, we have year-round expert support. So if you reach out to us, we'll get you a response very quickly. We're also SOC 2 Type 2 certified, so you can really use Zilliz Cloud with confidence, and you can be confident that your data is there and that the integrity is always preserved as well. Data recovery, backup and restore. We have something called a recycle bin, where if your data is really, if you do end up for something happens internally, or the data is accidentally deleted on the UI, you can always come and recover your indexes, recover your data in the event of accidental loss. Fully encrypted in transit, that way you can really preserve the security of your data as well. And we have role-based access control, right? And this allows you to protect a lot of your private, a lot of your sensitive data that you don't want a lot of other folks, let's say, outside of your privileged group to be able to see. So a lot of really key core enterprise features inside of Zilliz Cloud specifically, that really, bits and pieces are there in the Milvus Community Edition, but a lot of those enterprise features, if you want them, I think Zilliz Cloud is the way to go. Okay, features. Now, I sort of talked a little bit about what Zilliz Cloud can provide. I did a quick introduction into Zilliz Cloud. I want to follow that up with some of the features and some of the functionalities that you'll see in Zilliz Cloud. And this is going to be more, this will be a bit more, I suppose, a bit of a walkthrough through Zilliz Cloud as well. First, I want to go over some basics, right? And I hope I got you excited enough about Zilliz Cloud in the earlier section. And we'll sort of look at some screenshots here, talk about what's going on, and then we'll walk through some of the different features and functionalities that Zilliz Cloud provides. But before I do that, I want to go over really some terminology, I suppose, first. So inside of Zilliz Cloud, every single instance has a number of what we call capacity units or compute units associated with it. We have different types, as I alluded to earlier, different types of CUs. So you have a performance optimized CU. You also have a compute optimized CU. And excuse me, you have a performance optimized CU and a capacity optimized CU. And as you can probably guess, performance optimized one is there for very, very high throughput, large amount of queries. You want to be able to get the maximum performance out of your vector database. And the capacity optimized CU is there for folks who want to be able to store more data. Of course, the compute capabilities, query speed is also state of the art, but it is there if you want to be able to support a larger collections, if you want to be able to support more vector data. So that's a concept of capacity unit there. And we can go all the way from one capacity unit in multiples of 2, multiples of 4, all the way up to 256. Inside Zilliz Cloud, to keep track and to really maintain your index as well, we also have the concept of a project. This should be for folks who have used cloud resources, for folks who have used cloud providers before. The concept of project should be pretty familiar. Each database that you have inside of Zilliz Cloud is assigned to a single project, and you can, assign projects. You can create projects as you see fit to really isolate those databases. And inside each database as well, we have the concept of collections. These are essentially containers, or they're very, very analogous to tables and traditional relational databases. They're very similar to collections and MongoDB as well, for folks who have used MongoDB. And they're essentially the default container for vectors that are generated by the same model. So if you have a collection of, let's say, dimension 1536 vectors, you want to be able to search across all of them. Those would be vectors that are generated by the same model, or at least in the same domain, in the same hyperspace, right? And as I mentioned before, we also have a variety of different supported SDKs as well. So Python, Java, with more on the way. Sort of continuing along this line as well, we have AWS and GCP support. Azure will be coming soon, as you can see here from the screen here, and we're also available in AWS Marketplace as well, right? So if you have a preferred cloud provider, some folks prefer to use Google Cloud, others prefer to use AWS. You can select that. You have that flexibility when it comes to Zilliz Cloud. We're also able to support billion scale collections, right? And for the performance optimized, for the compute optimized CUs, capacity units, you can go all the way up to 256 CUs. And even with such a large amount of compute and storage, you were able to get millisecond query response times. And that's really the power of Zilliz Cloud, right? With the capacity optimized CUs, and those will give you very, very high storage capacity, you can go all the way up to 128. And that type of cluster will give you up to will support up to 3.2 billion vectors for you, right? So that's quite a bit. When we say billion scale, when we say production ready, we really do mean billion scale. It also provides a very, very user-friendly UI. Now, this is just one of the windows or one of the different pieces of functionality that's available to you inside of Zilliz Cloud. The ability to take collections, the ability to upload collections, to upload your own data, let's say in a table-based format or an S3 format, and to have those automatically in Zilliz Cloud for you. So if you choose to use the UI rather than using any of the SDKs, we provide you that flexibility, and you are able to do things that you wouldn't necessarily be able to in the Milvus community edition as well. Private link support. So if you have your own VPC, let's say in AWS, and you want to be able to connect your instance, your Zilliz Cloud instance to your VPC, you have very, very easy ways of doing that, and we do have guides online. If you want to use private link, we do have guides online as well. And rolling upgrades, right? So we have, you are able to schedule your own maintenance downtimes, and we have rolling upgrade downtime less than 1 minute per month. And what this really allows you to do is it allows you to focus on building your application. You don't have to worry about any of the infrastructure. You don't have to worry about, say, upgrading to the latest version. You have the latest and greatest vector search experience at your fingertips with no extra ops overhead required. Backup and restore. And for a lot of organizations, data loss can oftentimes accidental data loss can occur for a variety of reasons. It could be improperly set permissions. It could be a variety of other factors as well. And the consequences of data loss can be pretty bad, right? Having a reliable backup and recovery solution is very, very important to us. Being able to recover data that is accidentally lost is something that you can do very, very easily with Zilliz Cloud. It's a one-click solution to recover your indexes, to recover your vector databases, and to continue building and continue perfecting your application so you don't have to worry about that. So, okay, those are some of the features. Those are some of the, I guess, some of the more important features that of Zilliz Cloud, and we do have a full list on the Zilliz Cloud website as well. For those that are interested, I highly encourage you to go online, check that out. I do want to talk very, very briefly. I want to spend a couple minutes talking about migrating from Milvus. So I know a lot of folks here probably already have a Milvus instance up and running. Maybe they're considering moving to Zilliz Cloud, or they want to be able to say, hey, I already have this instance. I'm managing myself. I want to go to a managed version of Milvus. I want to go to something a little bit, I suppose, not as hands-on. I want to be able to focus on application development. We provide a very, very easy way of migrating from Milvus, and this section is pretty short. Really just going through, it's really 3 easy steps. The first is you go and back up your existing Milvus database. You can do this either directly to a local directory. You can do it to a local directory. If you have a very, very large database, you can actually upload it to an S3 bucket, of your choice. Backup, create a backup, right? Use the Milvus backup utility here to create a backup of your Milvus instance, and you can specify either a local folder, or you can specify a folder on S3. You can specify a location, a URL, and it'll automatically be able to do all of that for you, right? This I'll get into this a little bit later, but really a lot of the key idea here is that for a lot of folks that are trying to migrate from Milvus to Zilliz Cloud, there's a very, very easy way to do so. Just 3 steps here. And in the Zilliz Cloud tour that I'll give a little bit later, I'll sort of talk a little bit about this migration step and how you would do that as well. Okay, so now I want to spend a little bit of time to talk about some of the use cases here. And I do have 4 prepared, sort of going over some of the ways that Milvus users have used vector databases in production to be able to scale their applications. And these use cases it's not a 100% complete list by any means, but just some of the ones I figured I'd highlight so that you get a better understanding how people are using vector databases in production. What are some of the different things that you can use Zilliz Cloud with, and just give you a more general idea of how Zilliz Cloud can fit into your stack as well. So first, sort of going back to the point of using Zilliz Cloud with LLMs, I touched upon this a little bit earlier, but this is an example of OSS Chat, is an example application that actually we built, which allows you to chat with open source projects effectively, right? So if you have a lot of project information in the form of GitHub, in the form of other documentation that is not readily available, that these auto-regressive language models like ChatGPT or GPT-4, they were not trained on that data. You can actually grab that. You can retrieve that project information from Zilliz Cloud, from OSS Chat, on the OSS Chat website, and you're able to really answer quite relevant questions about those. So if we go through the architecture here, you'll see that on the right-hand side, I have these project documents that are actually embedded and stored inside of Zilliz Cloud. Now, when a person using the OSS Chat application asks a question, that data gets sent to Zilliz first, right? Zilliz Cloud will retrieve the most relevant documents by doing this nearest neighbor search, and it'll get injected as prompt into ChatGPT or whatever other LLM that you decide to use, and it will be able to give you a more domain-specific response, right? A response that has more domain knowledge, that is more correct and less prone, much less prone to hallucinations. This is a very, very common pattern that we see today. with Zilliz Cloud and using Zilliz Cloud LLMs, and also a bit of a sneak peek into future session as well, right? Where we'll dive a little bit deeper into this framework, and we'll show you really what are some of the great ways, some of the great libraries that you can use, open source libraries that you can use to use vector databases, to combine vector databases and large language models. Product recommendation. This is a bit more of a traditional one, definitely retrieval recommendation in that area, but it is a big one as well. And this is something. This is an example of a Milvus use case that we did with Tokopedia, where you have these products and there's a variety of different fields, right? You have the product itself, categories, labels, images, and the ability to encode all of those into a single vector, the ability to distill all that information into a vector and store all of that. And Milvus gives you a very, very semantically rich way to be able to do recommendation. So you can imagine if I have, let's say, products, if I have users, and I want to embed them into the same space, I have an embedding model or an embedding strategy that embeds them in the same space. I can then take those, store them in Milvus, be able to get the search results, be able to get the retrieval results, the recommendation results very, very quickly at large scale. If I have, regardless of how many products I have, if you're a very small mom and pop shop, all the way to something as big as Walmart or as big as Amazon, you have the capability using vector search and using a vector database such as Zilliz Cloud to be able to do scalable product recommendation. Personalized search, and this is something that the Milvus community did with Compass. And again, just an example of one of the many ways that you can use vector database such as Zilliz Cloud. The idea that if you want to make your search a little bit more tailored to the application that you have or to your specific type of data, you can take your data and you can turn them, again, as you see fit into these vectors. You can vectorize them and you can be able to do much, much more personalized recommendation, much more personalized search through that, right? So here, for example, instead of just searching by, for anybody who's trying to search for house either on Zillow or on Compass or on Redfin, rather than just saying, okay, I want 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, searching for these numbers, you can actually search by floor plan, by orientation, by area, or by outline, right? And it gives you a much, much more powerful way of doing search. And last but not least, reverse image search, right? So computer vision, is very, very near and dear to my heart. And essentially the capability to search for similar images using an image. And so if I have, for example, let's say a very, very large data set of images, and I want to be able to search for similar images in that very large data set, that's something that you can do very, very easily with Milvus, with Zilliz Cloud, and combining that with whatever embedding model that you have there. And again, I want to emphasize that that these 4 are just a small sample of the wide variety of different use cases that are out there, right? There are quite a few that I didn't go into. AI drug discovery, molecular search, doing a lot of things with geospatial data. But these are just 4 that I wanted to highlight, right? Using Zilliz Cloud LLMs, product recommendation, personalized search, and reverse image search. These are some of the common ones that we see, and hopefully it gives you a better idea of what Zilliz Cloud can be used for, what vector databases can be used for, and what some of the great things, great applications that you can build on top of that are, right? All right, so yeah, now I'm gonna stop right here, and I want to give a very, very brief demo or more quick tour of Zilliz Cloud. Talk about the UI. We'll go over how you can get up there, create a database, what some of the great features I'll highlight, some of the features I highlighted there earlier, how those are implemented, how you can use those in Zilliz Cloud, and really go over a lot of the great functionality that we have there as well. Okay? So I'm going to stop sharing here. And let me go to my other window. So give me 1 moment. All right, so a quick tour, a quick overview of Zilliz Cloud for folks who are not as familiar. Zilliz Cloud, you just go to cloud.zilliz.com, or if you go to zilliz.com, you can actually see a lot of those. You can see exactly where to go from there. And again, as I mentioned earlier, every database is actually inserted into a project, right? And if you have these projects that are up and running already, you can just simply go, create a database, select a project there. I actually already have a database that's running in Zilliz Cloud. Once you sign on, once you create an account, you already have a default project. You come to Zilliz Cloud, if you want to create an account right now, we will give you $400 in free credits to try it and to use it as you see fit. And in the database creation screen, we can see here that there's it's pretty straightforward, right? And I think in the slides earlier that I presented, you actually got a sneak peek at a bit of this as well. So if I wanted to create a new database, I'm not going to right now, but if I want to create a new database, all I need to provide is a name, select the project. In this case, you're also looking to create a new project or to use the default project that's there, select a cloud provider, select a region, and then a CU type. And as I mentioned earlier, we have two different types of capacity units. The first is a performance optimized unit, and the second is a capacity optimized unit, depending on what your application needs. If your application needs higher performance, higher QPS, or if your application needs more throughput, more storage, the capability to just do nearest neighbor search over a lot more vectors. And then you can specify your CU type as well, create username, create a password, and then go from there. And we also provide a very, very great user guide. So if you want to get more of an introduction, more in-depth introduction to how to use Zilliz Cloud, I'm going to click this link here, take you to the user guide, and you'll be able to see things from there. In this test database that I've created, you'll actually see it gives you a public endpoint that you can actually use to automatically connect to your database. And in this case, what I've done here is I've actually set a whitelist to be able to, for anybody to access it from any particular IP. But you can change this as you see fit. So if you only want, let's say, a very particular IP, or if you only want a particular network range to be able to access your vector database, to be able to access your Zilliz Cloud instance, you can do so there. Going back to that previous page, there's also the ability, as I alluded to earlier, to upload collections directly through the UI. And again, a collection is just a single unit. It represents the outputs of a single embedding model. You can think of it that way, right? And create a collection, either using your own data, uploading your data set, or here we have a great feature that you can actually use some example data as well. So if you're just getting started with a vector database, if you're getting started with Zilliz Cloud, you can import some example data, and this is actually a movie data set. Really, really cool demo. I highly encourage folks who haven't used Zilliz Cloud yet to be able to try that as well. We also have I think monitoring is also a big part of any vector database, and looking at your metrics and being able to set a variety of alerts, and being able to understand what is the utilization, how does that differ over a period of, let's say, 24 hours or an hour, right? We give you a very, very easy way. We track all those stats, give you a very, very easy way of doing that in Zilliz Cloud. You can assign more users here. All I have is the default user, but I can always create more if I need to, right? So I can, depending on what my application requires, depending on the people in my organization, that's always something that I can do there. I can create a backup, right? And again, I used all this earlier. If you have data loss and data privacy, is very, very important to us. And we've really built Zilliz Cloud around the idea of being able to preserve your data and having your data not having to worry about your vector data at all. And doing a backup here, being able to do backups is a part of that, right? To be able to create a backup here. I haven't created one yet because there's no data in this test database, but it is an option for you to do so. And also migrations, right? So this is a migration that I did yesterday. We will sort of show you or walk you through a very, very quick example of a Milvus migration. a little bit later. In the administrative console, I can actually see, there's whitelist that you can set here. Private link, this is actually a feature of Zilliz Cloud that will allow you to connect directly to your VPC. If you have one, right? So if you have already a cluster set up, you have a Zilliz Cloud instance, and you want to be able to connect those two together, this is a great way to do so. You can do so for both AWS as well as GCP. Right? You have resource monitors here, and resource monitors, alerts, and you also have a recycle bin. So based on some of the test databases that I've done in the past, let's say month or so, or even longer than that, I can actually restore those as I see fit. These are actually stored so that you can always get your data back in case of accidental loss. And then some of the more, very traditional features of any cloud platform as well. You have activities, alerts, you have billing. So if you want to be able to, let's say, upgrade your Zilliz Cloud instance, you want to be able to use a greater amount of CUs, and some settings here as well, right? So yeah, that's a very, very quick tour of Zilliz Cloud. Hope that was enjoyable. What I want to do right now is, this is a database that I created yesterday morning, and I'm going to stop sharing here. I'm going to sort of switch to another window I have, a terminal that I have, and I'm going to do an example migration. So I have a Milvus instance up and running here on my Mac. I'm going to migrate that to Zilliz Cloud, and we'll sort of see what that process is like. It'll probably just take me a minute or two. So it won't be very long, but I just want to show you that because I know a lot of listeners here, they're actually using Milvus already internally, considering a managed service. I want that to be an option for a lot of folks here as well, right? So again, I'm going to stop sharing here and let me switch over to a terminal that I have to really show you exactly how this migration is going to work. Let me share a different screen here. All right. So here I have a terminal. This is just a quick working space that I have. If I can actually show you, I have an instance of Milvus standalone running here. So standalone, I spun that up a while back, and I can actually, one of the interesting things that you can do, as I mentioned earlier, is you can actually back up this entire Milvus instance into a folder, into a single directory, and upload that into Zilliz Cloud to be able to use, just, snap your fingers, do that migration there. So what I've already done, that first step to the migration, downloading the Milvus backup executable is something that I've already done there. Make sure when you download Milvus backup to download the version that is relevant to your platform. In this case, I downloaded the one that is for Intel CPUs and for Mac OS. And it's really just as simple as creating the backup, taking a look at the backup, and then in here, I'll actually be using the MinIO client to copy that backup into a folder, and I'll upload that folder into Zilliz Cloud. So let me do that here. So the only thing that you want to do is Milvus backup, use the default config, right? So I'll use backup YAML. What you want to do is you want to create that backup first, give it a name. I'll say it's my backup. And what it'll do, give me 1 second here, as I got to get the database back up and running. 1 sec. In 1 moment here. All right. So let me reshare that. So And what I just did there, a minute ago was I went back into Docker Desktop and I got the database back up and running, and I can actually rerun that command that I wanted to earlier. So again, it's Milvus backup. Again, I'll give it the default YAML. I'm going to ask it to create this particular backup. And again, I'll call it my backup. And what it'll do is it'll actually go in and take all the data that you have and back it up. And in this case, all the data is actually, this is a Python notebook that I was working on a little bit earlier. It's simply doing text search over, some of President Biden's White House speeches, right? What I can do from here is I can actually take a look. I can actually use the same command, except this time, instead of create, I can actually get the backup itself. So if I do this, you'll see, it'll give you a blurb, it'll output some logs. At the very end, you'll see it was successfully backed up. Now, there's not a lot of data here, so this is actually done very, very quickly. And from this point forward, now that the backup is there, the only thing that I have to do now is use the client, copy that into a location that I'd like. And I've already set up the Minio client, so I can use this name, and then I'll just dump the entire bucket. Okay. And oops, there. Entire bucket to the local directory. And as I mentioned, there's not too much data, just a couple megabytes worth. And what I can do now is I can actually take this data that was here and I simply drag and drop it, or I specify where I want to upload it on Zilliz Cloud, right? So I'm going to switch back to the Zilliz Cloud window. So give me a moment. All right. So now we are back in Zilliz Cloud. We can take a look at this application here, and I've actually already pulled up the migration window. And all you have to do is take the backup that you just specified, called my backup, and upload it, right? And I can upload it here, upload my backup. Give it a moment here, and it'll actually should do it for you just like that. Try that one more time. Then all you have to do is click migrate. And again, there's not a whole lot of data here, but depending on the size of your vector database, it might take a little bit longer. If you have a very, very small vector database, it probably won't take this long. But it's a fairly quick process, very, very painless. 2-3 easy commands to be able to grab the backup script, dump your database, and directly upload it to Zilliz Cloud here, right? And you'll see it does, once that migration is finished, which shouldn't be too long here, you'll actually be able to see in the collections. In this case, I actually have the data here for me already. I can take a look at the schema. In this case, I have an embedding field along with title, date, location, as well as the original ID. You can preview the data, and you can actually conduct a vector search here as you see fit. I'm not going to do one here, but it is an option for you if you do that necessary. All right. So again, that was a quick intro to Zilliz Cloud, walking over some of the features. Again, if you sign up today, you will be able to get $400 in free credits to use Zilliz Cloud as you see fit. Migrate very, very easily from Milvus to Zilliz Cloud, be able to do a lot of things, be able to do exactly what you're doing with Milvus now on a managed service, very, very little ops overhead, and to be able to do that. Really, I think easily and really as you see fit, right? And that's just the power of Zilliz Cloud. Let me switch back to my slides here. All right, go back into presenter mode here. So yeah, so that was a quick tour of Zilliz Cloud, a very, very quick demo. And again, please, if you are interested, if this does look fun, if this does look like something that you want to try, if your organization is already using a vector database and you're interested in moving to something managed, something very, very powerful, high performance, you can try Zilliz Cloud. You can get in touch with us. We'll help you get up and running with a POC. And we will, we'll walk through all the steps necessary with you to be able to get that done.